welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from long ago, old newspaper articles from the past in the public domain, and we look at them with our modern eyes and modern perspective and see what we can learn from them. So on today's Microfiche time capsule, I'm really excited about this. I think it will be very interesting, is observation on luminous appearance at sea. And this is from the London magazine from September 1768. So, what I think is interesting about observations at sea is that we don't know nearly as much about the sea as we like to think we do. It is slightly mysterious. There are lots of animals and sea creatures and sea plants that we don't know anything about. So let's see what they had observed in 1768, and I am curious as to whether or not we know anything more about them today than we did then. So let's take a look. Observations on a luminous appearance of the sea with a curious description of the minute animals which occasion it, with a description of two other very singular sea animals, by Monsieur de Reville. So, I'm showing off, sorry, Reville, I guess. Anyway. The 14th of July, 1754, about 9 at night, and 8 degrees 47 minutes north, and 73 degrees longitude east of the meridian of Paris, the sea appeared all on fire. I viewed it from the ship's gallery with the utmost surprise. The sea, whose surface was but slightly agitated, was covered over with small stars. Every wave which broke about us dispersed a most vivid light, in complexion like that of a silver tissue, electrified in the dark. The more distant waves, which appeared as confounded together, formed at the horizon the appearance of a plain covered with snow, and the wake of our ship, whose brightness lasted a long while, was a lovely luminous white, interspersed with brilliant and azure points. Interesting. So it sounds like they saw something that was luminous at sea, like on the surface of the sea, that made it look like there were lights under the water. I'll bet that was really pretty. I will look it up later, what this could be, like in our modern terms, but I think that that's very interesting, that it was so specific, so interesting that they wrote down all of the specific details of how it happened and when and where and everything. 14th of July, 1754. As I was attentive in contemplating this new and extraordinary spectacle, I was struck with the light issuing from certain small bodies, which frequently kept fixed to the rudder when the sea left it. I caused some of the water to be taken up, and strained into a vessel through a handkerchief, after which observation I observed that the filtered water was no longer luminous, but that the handkerchief was covered with brilliant points, which were fixed to it. Well, that's pretty scientific, isn't it? He said, well, let's find out what's making this. So he strained the water through a handkerchief to get all of the small particles. And it was the particles that were luminous, not the water. So that's very scientific. I appreciate that. Some of these I took up upon the end of my finger when they insensibly lost their light. Interesting. So they stopped illuminating when he put it on his finger? And as they resembled the eggs of fishes in form and size, I had the curiosity to examine one of them by daylight with a strong magnifying glass, and was astonished to perceive a sensible motion within it. And being somewhat in doubt as to what I saw, I turned it about several ways to be satisfied by placing it on my nail in a drop of water. But how greatly was my surprise increased when, on surveying it attentively, I perceived it to be surrounded with a brilliant liquor, which every one in the room saw as well as myself. Another of these small insects, by the help of a pair of corn tongs, I fixed to the side of a glass cup, but this pressure, though very light, was evidently too powerful for so delicate an animal, for notwithstanding the light of 2 candles, we saw issuing from its body a bluish and luminous liquor, the glare of which extended to the distance of 2 or 3 lines in the water. I took it upon the point of the tongs, and it was no sooner placed under the microscope than it yielded again a considerable quantity of the same azure liquor. Notwithstanding, I had the satisfaction of seeing it still full of life and moving with much vivacity. So that sounds kind of like a krill, maybe? Like it's very like small microscopic animal. I'm not sure if I would think it was single-celled, considering they were saying that it had it was able to move, like, visibly. And if it was visibly able to move, I suspect it was not quite so microscopic. Microscopic, yes. That microscopic, no. Or what are those things called that they said will survive any sort of nuclear fallout? I forget what they're called. Microscopic sea animal? Sea creatures. Creatures is better. That's more or less specific. Phytoplankton. That makes sense to me. Doesn't phytoplankton glow? Microscopic sea creatures that glow in the dark. Oh, there's quite a few. They're mostly jellyfish and squid. Dinoflagellates. 9 incredibly glowing sea creatures. So something that, let's see if we can find something that might have, okay, no, that's not, definitely not it. The big fin reef squid, that's way too big. Yeah. Stenophora, comb jellies, no, it's also too big. Alarm jellyfish. Dinoflagellates. Ooh, that looks like it's more likely. Bioluminescent creatures are the microscopic plant-like dinoflagellates are found in warm tropical bays in places like Jamaica and Puerto Rico. These organisms flash blue light when threatened or caught in a wave. That sounds exactly like what they're talking about. Wow, it's really pretty. I'll see if I can find a couple pictures of these and post them up on the video, so hopefully you're looking at them too. But isn't that cool looking? Wow. It's like lightning, sort of, but coming from under the water. It's not in the sky. The sky's really beautiful. Hawaiian bobtail squids, too big. Crystal jellyfish, too big. Yeah, and then the barbelled dragonfish. Yeah, that's really freaky. Coral. Is that glowing coral? It's not coral. So it sounds like dinoflagellates win the award. Interesting. So, sounds to me like that's exactly what they were looking at. And specifically mentioning that it's a blue color. So I find that very interesting. So, because this is an article in a newspaper and, not an online article, they included a couple of sketches. They were unable to take pictures reliably back then, so they used artists to render their ideas. So this may or may not be accurate depending on whether or not the artist actually saw them. So I'm just letting you know they would ask artists to create their ideas. Yeah, I'm actually going to Google a few pictures of dinoflagellates, and then I'm just going to pop them up here so that we can compare them. Well, they're interesting. They're like 4-limbed or 3 to 4-limbed, I guess. I said they're more similarly related to plants than animals. That's interesting. But they do move, which I think is strange because plants don't typically. Wow, they really are small. I'm shocked that they were able to see these with a magnifying glass. But he did mention that they put them under a microscope, so I guess it sort of makes sense, sort of. Bioluminescent. It's so pretty. I don't know, that's so cool. Alright, let's take a look at the figures they drew. Yeah, I don't think they saw them themselves, it's okay. So, figure 2. At A is represented the whole body of the animal as grouped in the upper part of the shell. B shows several globules which seem attached to the body by fine threads. Once again, this is a plant, not an animal, so it's interesting that they were interpreting this on the assumption that it was an animal. I don't think it was a shell per se, since that's more crab-like, it's a lot, or like maybe a seashell, like an oyster or something, but it's not a shell per se. It sounds more like a shell in the sense of like a nutshell, but it definitely had some sort of like rounded part of it. Figure 3. Here the animal is in agitation. C. 4 movable horns fixed round the head, formed by several articulations. D. Head. E. 2 feet armed with claws. F. A large foot armed with an indented claw. G. The body of the animal. B. Globules which contain the azure liquor. once again, it's interesting that they interpreted this as an animal, since, according to Wikipedia, it's definitely closer to a plant. So it's, I mean, if you looked at this, assuming it was an animal, yeah, you'd be like, oh, that's an arm, and that's an arm, and where it's actually more like a branch. So I find that very interesting. It's just a misinterpretation. So, figure 4, I never saw the animal in this position but once. It appeared on its belly. 2 of its horns, HH, were much advanced, and the other 2, II, closed towards the body. KK, they were pointed with 2 little claws, represented by EE in figure 3. They just flipped it over. I mean, you're just, looking at it interestedly. Figure 5, the 4 letters LMNO show the shape of the shell in which the body of the animal is contained. It is transparent, and the shape, like an almond, cleft on the side, LON. Through this cleft issue the several parts of the animal when it is in agitation. Yeah, I mean, so far so good, right? I mean, that's interesting and all, but it's just a misinterpretation of the parts. Figure 6, this magnified figure represents an animal, which I have named the sea peacock. I have a feeling this might be something else that's not a dinoflagellate. PP, its 2 eyes placed almost over the head. XX, 2 very long horns. RRRR, 4 very delicate fins. T, a kind of a fork which terminates the inferior part of the body. VV, 8 feathers of a rose color of different sizes which form a very regular plumage. Yeah, this is definitely something else. I mean, I don't know what it is, so if you know what it is, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be interested to know what that could be. It looks sort of catfishy to me, with like some really weird feathery tails. I don't know that many fish with feathers. I mean, does anybody know of any fish with feathers? It seems to me like the first description is solidly a dinoflagellate, but like what they're describing now seems, it seems fishy to me, like literally, like it's a fish. But it's in figure 7 I'm interested in as well. Figure 7 represents a most singular insect found in the sea about 2 leagues from the island of Ceylon, a little to the south of Point Bataclo. AA, its 2 antennae. BB, 2 kinds of claws placed over the upper jaws. Okay, so they're not assuming that this is the same thing. C, the mouth, furnished with very small sharp teeth. DD, 2 feet, each armed with a talon. EE, 2 much larger armed feet. FFFF, 4 other small feet placed at the hinder part of the body. G, the tail, armed likewise with a talon. Yeah, it's kind of a scorpion-like, yeah? Is there such a thing as a sea scorpion? I mean, I guess maybe there could be. I don't see any reasons why it wouldn't be possible. So, but yeah, the first description is solidly dinoflagellates. So, out of curiosity, do we know more about dinoflagellates than we did then? Group of single-celled eukaryotes consisting of the phylum Dinoflagellata, which usually considered algae. Okay, so it's definitely planty. A large fraction of these are in fact mixotropic, combining photosynthesis with ingestion of prey. Interesting. So they're kind of halfway between, like, animals and plants. So I could understand why they would think that. Yeah. And a few of the forms are parasitic, and some of them will then create dinocysts. Interesting. A rapid accumulation of certain dinoflagellates can result in the visible coloration of the water, colloquially known as red tide. I think we've all heard of that one. Which can cause shellfish poisoning if humans eat contaminated shellfish. Some dinoflagellates also exhibit bioluminescence, primarily emitting blue-green light. Thus, some parts of the Indian Ocean light up at night, giving blue-green light. Well, that's pretty cool. But that's what they were talking about. That's probably why they discovered them, because they were glowing. I don't know if they would have found them as quickly. Yeah, that was first described in 7253. So it was right around this time when they were really discovered for the first time. And it looks like there were some more inquest into them in the 1830s, by Christian Gottfried Ehrenberg. Anyway, that's probably when they discovered it was a plant. It was more planty than animal-y. Although it looks like there's several different, like, kinds of them. that look a little different than the typical one. It's a single-celled animal, so there's not really much to look at life cycle-wise. Unless you like the phases of the cell. You know. Maybe you do. But I was thinking maybe that other figure 6, could be another form of dinoflagellate that is just a little more complex than some of the more simple ones. Since it seems like there are a couple different kinds, although it does seem awfully large to be one of the other kinds, so I'm not sure. But like I said, if anybody knows more about these than I do, please write it in the comments below. I find this very interesting that there are so many different kinds of things, and that this was discovered so long ago. I mean, I don't personally think of this time as even having microscopes. Obviously they did, but not the powerful ones that we have today. So compared to what we have today, they didn't really. But for the time, they had some really good ones. I mean, honestly, it let them see dinoflagellates, so I guess it must be relatively good. Harmful algae blooms, bioluminescence. I think this is really interesting. So anyway, the other creature, though, looks more like a shellfish to me. Like it could be, like I said, a water scorpion. I don't think that's a thing, though. Oh, it is. Okay. That's not what this looks like, though. Well, I don't know. It does a little bit. It's kind of long and skinny. But I don't know. Are sometimes called needle bugs or water stick insects, as they are slender than a paw. Water scorpions do not sting with their tail. They do have a painful bite. Strictly speaking, a sting by their pointed proboscis. Which means nose, by the way. I found that out. But this is much less harmful to humans than a true scorpion sting. Nepidae are found on all continents except Antarctica. They mostly inhabit stagnant or slow-moving freshwater habitats or like ponds, marshes, canals, and streams. Exceptionally, they have been recorded from hypersaline lakes and brackish lagoons. Yeah, but it doesn't sound like they're in the ocean, though. So I kind of think this isn't it. Scorpion-like animal in the ocean. Yeah, that looks more similar to the illustration. I guess it could be this. This is a Pteropterus. Ooh, I can't pronounce this. Zianchanensis. Okay, it's a little trilobite-ish, you know? Yeah, maybe not. Extinct group of vertebrates, never mind. Like what I'm reading about was a thing several hundred years ago. I don't know, this seems like some sort of shellfish, to be honest. It looks a little crabby, a little lobstery, yeah? Like exceptionally skinny for a lobster, but sort of in that direction. So I kind of don't think that it's anything that is distinct, but I don't think that it's anything super mysterious either. Oh yeah, there are some lobster crustaceans that are like related crustaceans that are quite thin. Yeah, I think it's more lobster related. Just going by the figure, it seems to be more lobstery. But as I said, I am not an expert, so if anyone has any better ideas than I do, please feel free to put them in the comments below. But I found this quite fascinating. I love that we have a name for it now, and we can actually know a lot more about it, and just know, like, I know what dinoflagellates are. I've heard of them, you know. I mean, a lot of people have. I have heard the name before, and it's nice to know that we can know more about them, and that we don't have to rely on accounts like this, which are slightly misleading, and even though they were scientifically based, they were not quite correct. And something that we discovered over time, that they are more similar to plant life than they are to animal life, and that their bioluminescence, while very, very cool looking, is also slightly dangerous. So it's probably not something they knew back then. So red tide is bad, and that's what causes it. So, but this is a different one. This is the bioluminescence, but still very cool. Very, very cool. I am impressed with how much detail they were able to give, although I feel like it was slightly misleading in the other figures. They made it sound sort of like that was the same thing, but it's not really, now is it? So I love how they put eyes on this other one. So because if figure 6 really is another dinoflagellate, they're one-celled animals. Like, they have little creatures, because they're kind of halfway between animals and plants, but like they have these projections off the side, but they're not feathers, and they're not really all that feather-like, and I don't think they have eyes, because that would require more than one cell now, wouldn't it? So that's very interesting. That it's rather misleading what they were putting up there. Either way, though, I think it was very interesting, and I think that was a great article to have in the newspaper, and so thank you for joining us for this Microfiche time capsule. I hope you learned something today about dinoflagellates. Please like and subscribe the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.